You and I love to talk about politics, but let's talk a little bit about breast cancer because it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You and I are both former patients, survivors. You were diagnosed in, I guess, in February of 2021. I was diagnosed in June of 2022. We both actually had the same kind of breast cancer, Amy. Um,
Right.
you and your right breast, me and my left breast. So those were different, but both hormone receptor positive, and we each got lumpectomy and radiation. So I feel
Here we
like
are.
we have a lot in common. And I know you've worked very hard to really emphasize prevention and the importance of early detection to diagnose breast cancer when it's most treatable and most survivable. Tell me about some of your efforts along those lines. And you're feeling fine now, aren't
Yeah,
you?
I am. I had another scare. They found another stage 1A on the other side, so I could join
Oh,
you back
wow.
in June of this year. And I had another lumpectomy and was back at work the next day, honestly. And then I had radiation for 5 days, and I'm great. Everything's good. But it
Oh, I
is
didn't
again,
realize that.
and yeah, no, it's okay.
I thought it
It,
was a calcification.
yeah,
I didn't realize it
well,
was
yeah,
a.
well, it was the same thing. And the I feel really good about the fact that I had those 6 months exam that you have to have after you've
Right.
been diagnosed with breast cancer, and so that made a huge difference to me. And I think that everyone should be able to have that kind of coverage. We know that after the Affordable Care Act passed, included in there was free mammograms for women over 40, and that's been a game changer. And you've seen 20-year survival rate for women diagnosed with breast cancer. The survival rate has increased dramatically. We still have 311,000 women diagnosed with breast cancer just this year, but the truth is that most of them, vast majority of them, are living so much longer, in fact living to old age. So that is good, and that's all early detection. So one of the things that still has to be fixed is that some women, especially women with denser breasts, they need an additional test once they're not sure what's going on. They can't tell on a
Right.
regular mammogram. And so this is this Find It Early Act that is bipartisan in both the House and Senate. I introduced the bill with Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas. And that is about if someone that kind of meets these qualifications of someone who is at a higher risk and the doctors think they need to look at this more, that gets covered as well. And then for women under 40, it's making sure that, again, if they're at a higher risk, and then we know what the genes and different things that would lead to that characterization if they have breast cancer in their family, other things, then they would have it paid for too. So under 40, it's the risk. Over 40, it's whether a doctor orders it based on their own findings.
Right. And I've been talking about this ever since I was
I
diagnosed,
know.
Amy, because I'm like a lunatic about this dense breast stuff because so many women were unaware if they had dense breasts, they weren't being told. The FDA changed the regulations, are now requiring everyone to be notified if they have dense breasts and suggesting that they talk to their provider. But the problem is, and again, I've been talking about this a lot. If first of all, it's 42% of women over 40 have some degree of breast density, which, as you said, makes it very hard to determine if there's an abnormality with a mammogram alone. And only mammograms, by the way, can truly determine if someone has dense breasts. You can't like feel your breasts and say, oh yeah, I have dense breasts. It's a mammogram that determines that.
Mhm.
But so 20, I looked this up because 22 states, although they're very spotty, and you, Amy, know all this stuff, have varying degrees of insurance coverage mandated by that state to
Right.
pay for additional screening. And I know Rosa DeLaura and Brian Fitzpatrick, because
That's
I
the
was
that's
impressed.
the House
The
authors,
House is,
right? That
yeah,
that
and I,
met, they went first, and then it took me a while to get a senator to do it with me, but I was patient. And no, Roger Marshall, we announced the bill with Rosa and Brian, and then it took us a while in the Senate, but
well,
now we have a bipartisan bill as
and
well. So yeah,
I was there on Capitol Hill with Rosa and Brian to
yeah,
just try to bring some
Yeah.
attention to this. So now it's been introduced in the Senate. So what happens now? I feel like Schoolhouse Rock. It's a bill on Capitol Hill. But I mean, it took you a while to find a co-sponsor, but where does it go from here? And I feel like I have this great community of women and men, hopefully,
Right.
who would love to help ensure that this law gets passed. I can only imagine how the insurance companies are going to fight it, Amy. But what can we do to help propel this and make it, move forward?
Right. Well, I think first of all, there's going to be some opportunities going forward for some major bills to go through on healthcare into that's next year. And whenever you have kind of a change in administration and new people, cabinet, I mean, I know Secretary Becerra would be helpful in this, and that is kind of a good moment to step in with a bipartisan bill. We also have the end of the year budget, and some bills can get placed on that. And then we'll just have a whole new lease on life. Because until I got a Republican in the Senate to do it with me, it was a little harder. And of course, Senator Susan Collins is supportive, and a number of people who are usually supportive of these breast cancer bills. So I feel like we could have a very good opportunity in to have it be part of another bill. The House is able to sometimes just pass bills by themselves because they're majority rules. So maybe that's what we've done in some cases, that they pass the bill on their own, and then the Senate kind of comes in and puts it in a bigger package. But I have all of these bills. If you remember, Congressman Wasserman Schultz and I did the early detection bill. And that took about a year or two to get it done, but we got it done and we put it on a large bill,
And what
and
what
that's how we got it
what
done.
tell us about that early detection bill and what that addresses.
Well, it is. It was looking at, especially in the African American community and in certain women in the Jewish community that have this gene, the BRCA
Ashkenazi
gene.
gene,
Yeah, the
or
Oscar,
BRCA
right?
positive.
Exactly. Yeah, you're on it.
I know
Um,
much about
that was, yeah, and they're younger, right? And it's devastating for everyone to get breast cancer. When you have little kids or you're 30 years old and you're not, it is really, really hard. And so what that was about was educating people in those groups that they were at a higher risk and trying to get them to come forward and go and get tests and get those covered some way. But it was mostly about educating them. And that bill that Debbie came to me, actually, we were friends, and she told me, which only her family and her roommate and a few other people knew, that she had had a mastectomy, that she'd had this just the whole time. It was unbelievable what she went through, number of surgeries. And she kept it quiet because she was a leader and doing all this stuff, and she just wanted to get it behind her. And then she decided this was the bill that she wanted to hang her hat on to get something done. So that was a major effort because there hadn't been as much focus. So we ended up passing the bill. And then we have the annual softball game that I'm the MC with Andrea Mitchell
I'll,
and Dana
I'll come
Bass.
and play.
Huh?
I'll
I
come
well
and
no,
play.
you need someone that like knows all the members' names, and
Oh,
I do like
okay. Yeah.
hilarious bios on each one of their past, that they were the dairy princess or something, and they were this, and they have 8 kids, and I don't know. I always am dissing the press. We play the press,
Oh, well,
and I'm
I'll
always
play for the press.
we play the press, and sometimes we beat the press. It's very hard because they have a lot of younger players. At one point, we had 2 great grandmothers on our team
Oh,
because they're
wow.
such a limited. So Debbie was one of the captains of the team and was really involved in it. And since that time, Andrea was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was, but most of the players don't have cancer that are on the team. But there's some incredible players, Democrats and Republicans, that play together on our team, and then we play members of the press. So Casey Hunt is on the
Yeah.
team.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's good.
It sounds fun. I wanted to
And
ask you about,
all the money goes to early. That's what to young breast
oh,
cancers.
which
Uh,
is
survive.
great because the American Cancer Society issued a report today and said while death rates are going down, more young women under 50 and particularly in their 20s are being diagnosed with breast cancer. You know, I started Stand Up to Cancer with some other women, and I talk
Uh-huh.
to scientists on a regular basis, and they still don't really understand why both breast cancer cases and colon cancer cases are increasing among younger people. And that's something we really need to get to the bottom of, because it's really a horrible situation. Having lost my husband to colon cancer when he was 42, that is becoming more common. And so I'm hoping that we'll really initiate some kind of important effort, Amy, to figuring this out.
Hmm. Exactly. We have been increasing funding at NIH every year over the last 10 years. And as you know, President Biden, one of his, I don't think once he ends his term as president, his wish to finish the job when it comes to his moonshot on cancer is going to go away. And the advent of AI and some of the incredible, I'm in the state of the Mayo Clinic,
Right.
right? The incredible research that's being done. Some of it's early detection and better technology. That's a lot of what we've been talking about today. But some of it is just figuring out what medications, what treatments work best, and then getting to the cure. And we're just getting closer and closer on a number of disease front. And the reason I mention AI is that it just allows us to process this data for scientists in a different way. That's going to get us to a much quicker conclusion. So I just think there's just a lot of positivity right now with researchers, and our job in Congress is to have their backs, make sure we get the funding, make sure we get out the positive stories actually when they do find cures or they're able to reduce death rates, as we've seen with breast cancer. Who knows what would happen to you and me if we, 25 years ago, where maybe it wouldn't have been caught and it would have gotten worse and worse and worse before it was too late. That was usually the story back then.
I know. And I guess maybe there should be some kind of consideration, although I guess in a population, a large population sample, the cost benefit analysis is not compelling. But if so many younger women are getting breast cancer and mammograms are recommended starting at age 40.
Yeah, then they have to start looking, re-examining those numbers. And that's part of what the Find It Early Act does, right? Because it gets at some of the over 40 in terms of the dense breast, but it also looks at under 40 and says if you're in one of these high risk groups, which it covers a lot of the younger women that get it, that you're going to be able to get it covered. So to me, you may not, cover for every single person, but if we can get into the broad high risk groups and show that those are the ones that are getting it, we're going to go a long way toward catching it early. That's a really good question, and it is a really good, with those numbers out there, reason to pass our bill.
Definitely.
So really good.
Definitely. Well, Amy,
Yeah.
it's always great to talk to you. I want to remind people that they need to schedule their mammograms. They need to discuss additional screening
Yeah.
if it's determined that they have dense breast. And one thing people, I think, are misinformed about are they're sometimes lulled into a false sense of security if they have no family history of breast cancer. And I just want to remind everyone, 80 to 85% of breast cancer cases have no
Right.
family history.
I had none in mind.
I had no family history either.
Yeah.
And so just because you don't have any first line relatives or distant relatives, even who have the disease, that doesn't mean that you're not susceptible. So please get your mammogram, inquire about secondary screening. And also, I think we do need to do a bigger job. I think you and Debbie Wasserman Schultz have started with this. But the fact that Black women have a 40% higher mortality rate from breast
Yeah.
cancer. And by the way, dense breasts make you not only it harder to see, but it increases your risk of breast cancer. And many Black women do have dense breasts, and many of them don't have as much access to affordable health care. So we really need to keep telling women of color and making sure the outreach is sufficient, because it's just unacceptable that they have a 40% higher mortality rate.
Exactly. It really is. And that's what we were trying to get at with our work with education. But then to go to really the next step is making sure that doctors can get it covered when it's these kinds of high risk groups. And I think that would just really, really go a long way. I'm just that we have just, I just have to keep looking, as frustrating as that place can be sometimes. I just look at the strides that we've made. And also, as we have more women in office, that has really helped us to make a bigger deal. If you remember back in the early days, there were hardly even women in any kinds of studies about anything. And then it made it very hard to treat these diseases. There's a huge, much more interest right now in menopause, and no one's afraid to say it. We're making menopause cool again. Oh, cool. Uh, and we're leading an effort. Haley Berry's been doing it with us, and Patty Murray and a number of us have Republicans as well, Lisa Murkowski. It's kind of an incredible effort that's going on the research side. Jill Biden has been really involved. So I'm really hopeful, Shelley Capito, a Republican, that we're going to see some movement on that and the research on that front going into the next year as well. And all of this can be kind of synergistic, as I look at
Well,
studying women's health more, hormones, as well as breast cancer.
Alzheimer's, we have a 4 times greater risk of being diagnosed with Alzheimer's than men
Yeah,
do. And
yeah.
women are just not small men with boobs. We are very biologically different.
See, you can say that on Instagram Live.
Well, anyway, it's great to see you,
All
Amy.
right.
We're going to be covering, by the way, on my newsletter, Wake Up Call, we're going to be covering Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and with a lot of really interesting stories and angles. So thank you for being part of our coverage,
Uh,
and thank you everyone for watching. And please be vigilant and talk to your friends and family members about being vigilant too, because early detection makes all the difference in the world.
exactly.
And just don't forget to get your mammogram. I forgot during the pandemic and I was 6 months late. I think you did the
Yeah,
same
that
thing.
the same thing. And yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
stay on
Never
schedule.
be
Great
late
to see
again.
you.
And I think also when you tell other people about it, I had one woman write me and she read that I had it and she just said, "Oh, I'm late on mine." She went in, she found out she had it, and she a little higher level. And I talked to her a year later and she was great, and cancer free. So, I mean, the more you tell other people, then they get their
Well,
exams.
it's interesting just to to also give you a friend story. A friend of mine went and got a mammogram.
Uh-huh.
They said she had dense breasts. She's like, I'd like to have additional screening. And they kind of resisted. This is in New York City. And she said, no, I want additional screening. And I don't know, I didn't ask her if she had to pay for it out of pocket. There's
Hmm.
probably a good chance the insurance didn't cover it. And guess what? She was diagnosed with stage 1B breast cancer,
Uh-huh.
and just had her surgery. So you have to be your own best advocate and really insist, and not accept the idea that all the doctors are going to be vigilant for you.
Exactly.
All right,
Exactly. All
great
right.
to see you. See you
Okay.
soon, I hope.
Thank
Okay, thanks
you. See you later.
everybody. Okay,
Okay.
bye.
Bye, Katie.